The hues of white clouds across the blue skies gradually fade as dark clouds gather across the Rwenzori mountains. Torrential rains pound the ranges of the mountains as if to wash away the sorrow of those who lost their loved ones. On November 27, 2016, the army under the command of Peter Elwelu staged a siege at the Omusinga's palace, Charles Wesley Mumbere, and in the shootout, over 100 loyalists, including royal guards, their families and children, were killed inside the palace.
About it, I take responsibility for whatever happened. I take full responsibility, and I stand by that even in heaven. That will be my answer. So nobody should threaten me. Nobody should intimidate me. I take full responsibility of whatever happened. And I did it in accordance with the laws of Uganda. I did it within the law. And I acted professionally. I would have finished all those people who were there, about 200, if that's what they wanted. But I saved so many lives in a situation that was not even easy to save life.
Elwelu has since then been promoted to the rank of Lieutenant General and is the Deputy Chief of Defense Forces. Before this incident, the Rwenzori, an ethnic melting pot, has historically been a flashpoint of conflict. Shortly before the attack at the palace, partly unresolved political, historical injustices and land disputes fanned the flames of a tribal tinderbox as clashes broke out and quickly spread in Kasese, Kabarole and Bundibujo districts. Earlier on November 26, 2016, security personnel raided the office of the kingdom's prime minister and 8 royal guards were shot dead. In retaliation, loyalists targeted police posts across Kasese, hacking to death 16 police constables. About 225 people, including the Omusinga and 4 children, were arrested shortly after the palace siege. Today, though about 132 have been freed, over 78 remain held on remand. Another 9 prisoners have died in cells. 5 years after the violence, no meaningful reconciliation has taken place in the Rwenzori. Today, all that lies at the seat of the kingdom is rubble, and the Omusinga has been restricted from visiting his subjects. Exactly 5 years ago and 1 day, this lady, who is a Seventh-day Adventist, spent the day home to honor the Sabbath day. When her son heard the gunshots, he quickly rushed to the palace where his father worked as a royal guard, but he couldn't access it as soldiers sealed it off. She reveals that she later heard a loud explosion.
I was only shocked to be called that come and pick the dead body of your husband. Ever since he died, have been suffering because he left me with 9 orphans and they are all school going. I only do casual work in people's farms, which pays less. Have been working with my children ever since the lockdown started, just for survival. Government gave us 500,000 shillings, but it all went into school fees.
Today she lives on the outskirts of Kasese district with 9 orphaned children. She makes baskets and does casual work to eke a living. On 27th November 2016, this woman received a phone call from her husband. Barely after the shooting incident at the palace, his phone was switched off and he has not been seen alive again. Her children, including her 4-year-old daughter she gave birth to 5 months after the death of her husband, often ask her questions she cannot answer.
It's now 5 years. I have lost hope because others were released, others are still in jail. I need government to assist me because currently I work on a farm as a casual laborer and I'm still renting. But what hurts me, children ask me, Mom, where is our dad? I tell them, your dad is dead. Where did you bury him? I fail to answer. We all start crying.
She works at Mubuku irrigation scheme near Kasese town to fend for her family. This woman lost her husband and 2 children who had gone for prayers at the palace. From a distance, she could see smoke billowing from the palace barely after she heard loud explosions.
I called my husband at lunchtime. He told me he had gone for prayers at his mother's place. Ever since then, his phone is off. We tried to call him and waited for him. And on that same day, I waited for him at night. He never returned. On that fateful day, the palace was bombed and I saw smoke. I have checked all the prisons from Kasese to Nalfenya, but have never seen him. It's now 5 years and I have never seen my children. I suspect they might have died with their father in the palace. I'm facing various challenges, including my family, and the government doesn't think about us. I'm currently suffering paying rent, but the government is not responsive at all.
All the 3 victims have received a paltry 500,000 shillings as compensation from government. Their children are currently out of school and they live a destitute life. Even some families of the police officers who died in reprisal attacks have not been compensated.
Government tikatuhaga buyambe na kati abana betu balene babona school fees ikatuvura na balera hakasasiro obu norora business enkora ejo yo mutwaro ningu haho ekyokulya ngai haho na rent kando obukwatulia aho mutuhura angu bakaba royal guard balene babaho buyambe betu ngito bakaba police tubakutijuka ikiro na timu. Atson tusaba government obuyambi kurana netu bakaba polisi batuyamba ngabaseja baitu bafoirenga aha mulimu.
Samson Muhindo, who is the caretaker for the royal house, says the scars are yet to heal.
People are not happy. I'm telling you, take it, but people are not happy. They still have wounds on their hearts. They want the king back.
He argues that accountability should be held on both sides and those who lost their loved ones be compensated. Reverend Ezra Mukonzo Yongesa, the chairperson Kasese District Interreligious Committee, says only negotiations and dialogue can restore peace in this restive pocket. He says that government ought to free the Omusinga from house arrest.
I think what we need for now is dialogue, negotiation, peace-making dialogue, so that our people, the Omusinga and his subjects, are released, and I think peace will prevail.
All these communities need to reconcile. For example, there are those who still think, for example, some of the challenges that we had with Toro. These communities need to reconcile. There has been a silent war between, for example, Kasese and Toro in the past. But we have not resolved these issues. We think that the communities have moved on, and then sometimes the issues begin to reemerge. So reconciliation, not guns or not violence, will be a very key component in finding lasting peace in Kasese.
The number plate.
In February 2018, President Yoweri Museveni donated 10 motorcycles and 200 million Uganda shillings to different community groups in Kasese district, including one for Royal Guard widows and orphans.
This money is from President Yoweri Museveni.
I think one of the unfortunate things really that has also happened is that, again, even the families of the police officers that were involved in that died, for example, during the conflict, are also facing the same challenges as the wives of the Royal Guard. So we talked to some of them, we find that some of them, it has been, for example, very difficult to access gratuity. I think there is some money that is supposed to be paid to officers when they die. It has been long for some of the victims to be able to access these resources.
In April 2017, community activists compiled lists of dead and missing people identifying 115 adults and 15 children killed on November 27th at the palace. In May 2017, a coalition of 40 Ugandan and international organizations urged the Ugandan government to facilitate an independent and transparent probe involving international expertise into the Kasese killings and urged the government to invite relevant African Commission experts and United Nations special rapporteurs to participate. The government is yet to respond. Kasese remains relatively calm of recent, but beneath the silence lies unresolved grievances and festering wounds. A bush is sprouting outside the Prime Minister's office in Kasese town. The heavy military deployment has since then been replaced by roadblocks in town. Creations Forum Africa, a local-based NGO, recently conducted research which shows that families of the victims of the attacks continue to live in abject poverty.
Some of our findings show that the livelihood of the women, especially the women and the children, really has been pathetic. They have not been able to find livelihood because they lost their breadwinners. Some of the children have dropped out of school. But also there is a cry for justice because it's 5 years since the attacks and people are crying for justice. If you look at the justice system, 5 years down the road, people are still in prison and they have not yet been tried. So,
according to the research, 44% of the families live in mud and water homes, 12% in grass-thatched huts, 18% are living in rented homes, and relatives accommodate 16%. The research indicates that students who dropped out of school was largely attributed to a lack of tuition, pregnancy for the girl child, and schools being a long distance away from the homes of learners. In 2017, 5 MPs petitioned the International Criminal Court asking the Hague-based institution to investigate allegations of genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity.
ICC to come and look into these issues. We believe there is a case of violation of human rights. We believe there is a violation and there is crimes against humanity. It is the reason we are inviting the ICC to come and look into our matter.
All these politicians saw they saw the things building up. And yet everything was in their hands. If they were really patriots, if they loved the people of Kasese, they should have stopped this. These MPs should have stopped this. The fact that they failed to stop it, they must get out of parliament. They should just resign and allow other people to take over. Because they betrayed the people of Kasese and Rwenzori. They saw this coming. They saw it building up. They all knew about it. But they accepted it to reach the culmination point. And it is done. Finished. What are they talking about? So actually the people who should take responsibilities are the politicians from Kasese. Especially those opposition politicians led by their leader of opposition.
In its response, the office observed that there were incidents of violence, including violent clashes between the Ugandan security forces and various militant groups immediately before the events in question, as well as in the Rwenzori sub-region more generally. Nonetheless, in the absence of the required threshold of intensity and organization, the office concluded that the alleged acts could not be appropriately considered within the framework of Article 8 of the statute as a non-international armed conflict. And I quote, "The alleged conduct also did not satisfy the contextual elements of the crime of genocide under Article 6 of the statute." Accordingly, the office has undertaken its analysis within the framework of alleged crimes against humanity under Article 7 of the statute, I close quotes, reads the report. It reads further, and I quote, "In order to determine whether the operation could be considered an attack against a civilian population for the purpose of Article 7 of the Rome Statute, the office observes that the operation appears to have been aimed at dismantling the royal guards, who are understood to have undertaken certain security-like functions on behalf of the king and were armed with instruments such as machetes. I close quotes. However, the report indicates that the actions of the security forces had to be conducted within a law enforcement paradigm which requires that the use of lethal force be restricted to those situations where it's strictly unavoidable to protect life. Records according to the ICC indicates that a large number of other civilians were present in the kingdom's administration offices and or palace compound at the time of the operation, including palace domestic staff, local business enterprises, women, children, and various other visitors.
He started mobilizing his fighters on Friday, and he sent away the people who are not fighters on Saturday, including his wife. Mumbere sent his wife on Saturday the 26th in the morning. That's when he sent his wife with his children, and they all left, with including all his property. In Mumbere's house there was nothing. He was only remaining with one trouser and one shirt. That's what he had in his house. The rest had been taken away by the wife on Saturday. So whoever was not a fighter, whoever was not was what? Left on Saturday.
Report indicates that the operation was carried out in an indiscriminate and disproportionate manner. In this regard, the office notes with concern the types of means used, including live ammunition and rocket-propelled grenades. In the circumstances, the court argues other means would appear to have been reasonably available to accomplish the objective of securing the surrender of the persons inside, whether by less lethal means or by, for example, disconnecting the palace's water and electricity supply. Taking into account the foregoing, the office therefore concluded that members of the Ugandan security forces appear to have committed in Kasese on 26th and 27th November 2016 underlying acts constituting the crime of murder under Article 7(1)(a) of the statute. However, the International Criminal Court, having assessed the information available, notwithstanding the office's concern that the use of force in the circumstances appears to have been both indiscriminate and disproportionate, it has been unable to satisfy itself that the underlying acts were committed pursuant to or in furtherance of a state policy.